Finding Frankie is the latest Mascot horror game series to arrive on the scene, and so far, it's ticking all the usual boxes. Creepy abandoned children's location? Check. Mascots that start off cute but get increasingly more degraded and disturbing? Check. Secret VHS tapes? Bingo. Main character who never says a word or reacts to anything, despite horrific things happening right in front of them? Yep. This time it's an abandoned trampoline park that has been converted into a 4-player race to the finish. This game show is televised to a private network and the winner gets $5 million. However, the losers get much worse. Not only do they get no money, but they also get mauled to death by the mascots or by one of the multiple death traps laid out in front of them. All of this carnage is live streamed for people's entertainment while viewers make bets on who they think will survive the longest. But like most Mascot horror games, Finding Frankie has secrets to uncover, hidden details that you don't usually spot on your first playthrough. And as always, I'm here to uncover and overthink them for you. So here are 5 things you might have missed in Finding Frankie. Obviously, spoilers ahead. Number 1. The CEO office. Like any good Mascot horror game, Finding Frankie has a secret room that takes a little bit of effort to find. Right near the start of the game, you can find this door that requires a key to open. This key can actually be found in a room that is surprisingly easy to miss. Towards the end of the game, the player is faced with a giant Fall Guy style parkour track, but tucked away in the shadows in the background is a staircase that leads to the CEO's office. Inside this room, the player can find a file that hints towards the game's ending, as well as a clock that seems to trigger a really creepy audio cue. But if you come back to this room after you finish the game, then you can find the key for that original door sitting on this chair to the left. Now with this key in hand, you can travel to this secret room that unlocks the Easter egg achievement. This room contains all the main mascots you meet in the game, alongside some really interesting information about them. More on those later. But the way that this room is set up makes me think that it has a key component to this game's story. As we'll talk about later, this game's story seems very simple at first, but the more you delve into it, the more you realize there is definitely a deeper story hidden here if you take the time to go looking for it. This room might seem very simple at first, but the more you delve into it, the more you realize there is definitely a secret meaning here. Oh, and just be very careful when you look to the right. In fact, this leads me very nicely onto point number 2. Number 2, there's something up with Frankie. Towards the end of the game, it's revealed that the entire game show is being overseen by a different version of the Frankie mascot. This is the original design for Frankie, and as we'll find out later, he is known as the other Frankie. He was supposed to be completely replaced by the new Frankie, but for some reason he's still around. But this character is far more creepy than he first appears. It's very clear that something is off about this mascot when we meet him. But what you might not know is that Frankie is watching you all throughout the game, and I don't mean on these camera screens. Several times throughout the game, you can find the other Frankie watching you in the shadows. The first time you can spot him, he's tucked away in the dark corner of this room. He's really easy to miss, I know I did on my first playthrough, but this isn't the only time we can spot him. He turns up all over the game. He's watching you in the water park area. He's lurking somewhere in every single chase scene in the game, and we can even see him peeking at us from up here towards the final part of the game. As I said earlier, there's even one hiding in the dark corner of the CEO's office as well. Yeah, this one's kind of creepy when you don't know that it's there. But more than just being a creepy detail, I think this hints to the story being far more complicated than it first appears. It seems a little bit suspicious that the other Frankie is all over the place while also never leaving this room. Not only that, but he's in the CEO office and he's also just outside on this walkway right at the same time. I think this is hinting that there are multiple other Frankies, something I hope to talk about in a future theory. Leave a comment if you want me to make that one. Either way, seeing all these Frankies constantly watching you is a very creepy detail. Number 3, the first death location. Now at this point it seems like a Mascot horror trope that there is an original death or accident that leads to the closure of the main location. I mean, you can't have a creepy abandoned location if it's full of people now, can you? Five Nights at Freddy's had its bites, Poppy Playtime had its Hour of Joy, and I've even theorized that Indigo Park had a similar event too. But of course, Finding Frankie has its own horrifying incident that closed down the trampoline park. Right before our rendezvous with Henry Hotline, and yes, I'm being polite there. No! Oh Jesus Christ, he's actually scary. We can find a newspaper clipping that tells us there was indeed a death in the trampoline park that made it onto the news. Not only is this a little bit suspicious that it's just left here like this, but this would serve as a reasonable explanation for why the park ended up closed and is now used for these Squid Game type shenanigans.
Yes.
But while this newspaper clipping doesn't explain what happened, there are several hints throughout the game that might give us an idea. We can find several areas of the park that have been cordoned off with police tape. This still being up likely means that the park never reopened after this incident. But I think we can even find where this accident took place. Looking around the park, and one thing is made abundantly clear: this place was never built with health and safety in mind. Several of the parkour sections that were part of the original design look like they are ready to fall apart. While you might think that this is because no one has maintained them in so long, I don't think that's the whole story. Some of the design mentalities here are clearly unsafe. These fun tubes spitting people out into the middle of the cafeteria, these Fall Guys style parkour sections being just a little too high, and then there are all of the sections of the park that are... One of these sections is found during our first encounter with the Noob Noobs. If you paid attention, you probably noticed that this section of the floor was completely missing, showing just how flimsy the supports for these trampolines were. But there is actually a huge hint that this is where this mysterious death in the park took place. Not only is this one of the areas under investigation, but when you stand underneath here, take a listen to what you can hear. Not only does this massively imply that this is where the accident took place, but it's also very suspicious that our character is hearing this noise. It's faint and in the distance, almost like a memory. But this isn't the only mysterious thing about our playable character. Number 4. There is more to our character than meets the eye. Like most mascot horror games, our character is pretty much a blank canvas. They never speak, they don't explain a thing, and they don't even react to the killer mascots and all the death that they've left behind. Trust me, if that were me, you'd be hearing every reaction possible. Oh my god, they're people, that's cool. 1, 2, 3, 4. Go in the toilet. No. Take the plushie. Take the plushie. Oh, it's really itchy. But unlike most other mascot horror games, in Finding Frankie we do actually get to see our protagonist. They're just completely disguised from head to toe. Now at first you might think that our character is just a nobody, faceless, that their identity is not important to the plot. Well, there are some hints that that might not be the case. Towards the end of the game, we get to see some of the viewers' reaction to our game. These games are live streamed on a private network, and like any good live stream, there is a healthy, positive, and constructive chat to cheer along the contestants. But if you read through this chat log, one of the messages definitely stands out. Most of the chat messages are in all caps, but this one is in lowercase and it seems a little bit odd. It seems like someone is talking directly to us, the last remaining player. They claim to know who we are and they ask where their brother is. Now this seems a little strange. This mysterious character seems to be hinting that we are someone noteworthy, someone recognizable even though we are wearing the same rabbit costume as every other contestant. To make this even more interesting, this mystery character is asking about their brother. Now this could be anybody, but we do have a pair of brothers that are significant to the story. The original founders of the Finding Frankie brand were two brothers. The brand started as a line of cereals, but the IP was eventually sold and expanded to include the trampoline park. Now, of course, this is a long shot, but it could be possible that the brother in question was one of those. After all, this company was willing to turn a condemned trampoline park into a contest of death. Who knows what else they would be willing to do? Did they want to bury their tracks, hide their paper trail, or did one of those brothers volunteer for the game? Either way, this mysterious character definitely seems to think they know us, which means in one way or another, we are connected to them. Only time will tell who we are and why this person thinks we know something about their brother. But while we might have very few answers at this point, that does lead me very nicely onto my final point. Number 5. The many lies of Finding Frankie. Now at first glance, Finding Frankie seems like a pretty simple story. It seems to be a lot more upfront with its lore than some of the mascot horrors, and I've even seen some people say that this game does away with the whole hidden story gimmick. But I actually don't think that's true. If anything, I think this simplistic story is just a cover, a front, misdirection for the real one, the one hidden underneath. The story as it's told to us is simple. We supposedly bought a bunch of cereal boxes hoping to find our golden ticket. Golden VHS. Okay, just a regular VHS that serves as our invitation to this game. After getting here, we quickly learn that the Frankie mascot is out to kill the contestants. Except not us, for some reason. We're supposed to be left alive until the final game. I wonder why we are the chosen one. After making our way through the puzzles and avoiding the deadly characters, we are hit with several shock reveals. The first is that the Frankie mascot is actually a redesign, and the old Frankie that should have been retired is now running the show. He was the one keeping us alive for the big finale. After all, this is the last game show before the company goes bankrupt. Right? The second shock reveal is when Henry Hotline explains that the company isn't actually going bankrupt, but we are the only one to make it this far through the game. The implication here is obvious. The company doesn't want any of the contestants to win. The grand prize is $5 million. That's a huge amount of money, especially when the bets are around this size. Why make the game fair when you can rig it so no one ever wins? It's just an endless stream of money. In fact, it seems like the money the company is making is coming from those bets. People are betting on how far people will get, how far they will survive, and what game will take them out, and so on. So what better way to rig the outcome than by having an AI mascot like the other Frankie watching every move? If people start to put big money on something, Frankie can make sure that the house always wins. When we finally make it to Hexa Havoc, the place that we were supposed to lose, we see the cartoon Frankie getting extremely agitated in probably one of my favourite voice lines in a mascot horror to date. Once again, this game was rigged just like all the others. Even after winning, Frankie sends a barrage of noobs down just to make sure that we still lose. But in one more shock reveal, we somehow manage to survive the fall. We confront Frankie, who then takes us to our cash prize. But of course, there was one final shock reveal. We are told that no one has ever made it this far and that we are now the star of the show. Of course, a star can't leave a show after only one season, so we are then taken to a secret room where Frankie shows us just how well this latest season is doing. And of course, we're doing better than all the rest. But just in case you didn't quite have your fill of shock reveals, there is one final twist if you manage to make it to the secret room. This room shows off all three of the large mascots that we meet throughout the game. There is the other Frankie, who we learn was supposed to be replaced. We see Henry Hotline, who apparently there are two of, interesting, and then we see the evil version of Frankie, the killer death robot. This one heavily implies that the game takes place in our future, at the very earliest in 2039. It seems like this game show has been going on for a lot longer than we thought. But a lot of this story is actually, to put it politely, bollocks. If this game takes place in 2039, then how the hell are cereal prices this cheap? Inflation is bad enough now, imagine it in 2039. On top of that, if we are the only contestant to make it this far, like Henry Hotline says, then why are their bodies littered all over this final area? In fact, if no one has ever made it to Hexa Havoc, then how do the chat know what these two games are supposed to be like? People even talk about Hexa Havoc as if they've seen it before. But this gets even more obvious when you listen in the elevator before you enter this room. We can hear the faint sound of a heartbeat and then this unmistakable line in the background. That part on the screens was pre-recorded, almost like this exact scenario has happened before. But then once again we are told that no one has ever made it to the grand prize. Then we're taken to a secret room that is clearly only shown to contestants who make it to the end. But once again, the floor is quite literally covered in bodies. Again, we are not the first person to make it this far, it was all a lie. To make things even more confusing, Frankie several times throughout the game tries to help us, but then also Frankie is the one trying to kill us. Now this one could make sense if there are indeed multiple Frankies like I theorized earlier, or it could all just be more of the lies. All of this starts to paint a picture when you consider that this game show seems to be stuck in a loop. Everything we have done has been seen before, and likely will be done again. The ending of the game is left incredibly ambiguous. We see all the contestants that made it this far ended up being killed anyway, with our character slowly turning to see Frankie stood behind him. It's unclear whether we are about to join them or if our amazing ratings are enough to keep us alive. But at this point, with all of these lies, who's to say that even these ratings are accurate? Either way, with this character seemingly an important figure and the CEO's office clearly hinting that there is a conspiracy here, I'm willing to bet that finding Frankie 2 will shed some more light on this deep mystery. It seems like we will definitely be getting a sequel to Finding Frankie, so I hope we get some more information. If you did like this vid, don't forget to leave it a like and let me know down in the comments what you thought about this list. Was there anything that I missed? Let me know. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.